The false dawn. The victory bells of the Corvini Empire rang across 1,000 worlds. From the crystal cities of Syrian Prime to the mining colonies of the Outer Rim, every citizen celebrated the same triumph. Humanity had fallen. Earth was silent. The galaxy belonged to the Corvini at last. Admiral Zeth Korvac stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the celebration displays flicker across his command screens. His scaled skin gleamed under the bridge lights, and his forearms moved gracefully as he adjusted his ceremonial armor. The war had lasted 12 brutal years, but now it was over. The humans had surrendered completely, their fleets destroyed, their colonies abandoned, their homeworld dark and lifeless. Admiral, called Sub-Commander Rhys Taylor, her voice carrying the excitement of youth, the victory parade on Corvini Central has begun. They're requesting your presence via hologram. Rhys was young for a Corvini officer, her scales still bright silver instead of the deep bronze that came with age. She had fought in the final battles against the human resistance, and like many young warriors, she believed victory meant the enemy was truly gone. Zeth nodded slowly. Patch me through to the celebration. The Empire deserves to see their conquering admiral. He straightened his shoulders and activated the communication array. Across hundreds of worlds, his image appeared on massive screens, and millions of Corvini citizens cheered his name. Citizens of the Empire, Zeth began, his voice carrying the authority of absolute victory. Today we celebrate not just the defeat of humanity, but the dawn of eternal Corvini rule. No longer will any species dare to challenge our rightful dominion over the stars. The humans fought with clever tricks and desperate courage, but in the end, they learned what all rebellious species learn: the Empire always wins. The crowds roared their approval. On mining worlds, workers raised their tools in salute. On trade stations, merchants displayed Corvini banners. On military bases, soldiers fired ceremonial blasters into the sky. The galaxy had never seen such unified celebration. But deep in the Eternal Dominion's sensor room, technical specialist Vorn Kedish was frowning at his displays. Vorn was older than most Corvini, his scales dark with age and experience. He had served in the fleet for 30 years, through 3 major wars, and he had learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. "Commander Talor," he called out, his voice uncertain. "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the outer sensor grid." Rhys turned from the victory celebration, still smiling. "What kind of readings, specialist?" "Probably just debris from the final human fleet. We destroyed quite a few ships in the last battle." Vorn shook his head. "That's just it, Commander. These readings don't match any known human technology. The energy signatures are different, more complex, and they're coming from multiple locations along the galactic rim." Rhys walked over to his station, her expression shifting from celebration to curiosity. "Show me." The display changed, showing the 3-dimensional map of known space. Dozens of small red dots blinked along the edges of explored territory. Each dot pulsed with the same strange energy pattern, and they seemed to be moving in coordinated formation toward the inner systems. "Have you identified what they are?" Rhys asked, feeling the first cold touch of unease. "That's the problem," Vorn replied. "They're too far away for detailed scans, but they're big, much bigger than any human ship we've encountered. And they're not broadcasting any identification signals. They're just there." Before Rhys could respond, the main communication array crackled to life. A voice echoed across the bridge, speaking in clear Corvini standard, but with an accent that made every officer freeze in place. It was a human voice. "Attention Corvini fleet. This is a message from the Ta City Defense Network. We know you're celebrating our defeat. We know you think the war is over. We know you believe humanity is finished." The voice paused, and in that silence, the victory celebrations suddenly felt hollow and distant. Admiral Zeth stormed onto the bridge, his ceremonial armor clanking with each step. "What is the meaning of this? I thought all human communication networks were destroyed. The voice continued, calm and measured. You destroyed our colonies. You shattered our fleets. You forced our governments to surrender. But you made one crucial mistake. You assumed that governments and colonies and visible fleets were all that humanity had built. Technical displays across the bridge began showing new information. Ancient construction sites in deep space, previously dismissed as abandoned mining operations, were revealed to be massive shipyards. Asteroid bases that had appeared empty were showing signs of recent activity. Hidden facilities in the void between stars were powering up systems that had been dormant for years. For 12 years, while you fought our public fleets, we built in secret. While you conquered our known colonies, we prepared in the dark. While you celebrated our surrender, we finished our real work. The transmission paused again, and this time the silence felt ominous. Commander Taller's hands moved quickly across her control panel. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy spikes throughout the outer systems. Whatever these humans built, it's activating now. The human voice spoke once more, and this time there was something different in the tone. Not anger, not hatred, but something far more dangerous. Certainty. You wanted to rule the galaxy. You wanted to prove Corvani's superiority. You wanted to show every species what happens when they oppose your empire. The voice grew stronger, more confident. So we're going to show you something in return. We're going to show you what happens when you underestimate humanity. The transmission ended, but the effects were immediate. Across the Corvani fleet, sensor operators reported the same impossible readings. Ships were appearing where no ships should exist. Not just a few vessels, but hundreds. They emerged from the deep void like ghosts, becoming solid, their hulls massive and angular, their design unlike anything in the Galactic archives. Admiral Zeth stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Each human ship was larger than his flagship. Their energy signatures showed power levels that exceeded anything the Corvani had ever built, and they were approaching from every direction, surrounding not just his fleet, but emerging near every major Corvani system simultaneously. How many? He asked quietly. Vorn's voice was barely a whisper. Over 3,000 confirmed contacts. Admiral, and they're still appearing. Riss turned to her admiral, her young confidence shattered. Sir, if these readings are accurate, each of those ships has more firepower than our entire battle group. How is this possible? We won the war. We saw them surrender. Zeth's forearms clenched into fists. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered an enemy that could hide such massive military strength. The humans had not just survived their defeat. They had used it as camouflage while they built something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Send a priority message to Corvani Central, he ordered. Tell the Emperor that the war isn't over. Tell him that humanity just revealed their true strength. And tell him. Zeth paused, staring at the impossible fleet surrounding his forces. Tell him that we may have seriously underestimated our enemy. As the human ships continued to materialize throughout the galaxy, the victory celebrations fell silent. On world after world, Corvani citizens looked up at their skies and saw new stars that hadn't been there moments before. But these weren't stars. They were ships, human ships, and they had been waiting in the darkness for exactly this moment. The false dawn of Corvani victory was ending, and something far more complex was about to begin. In the depths of space, humanity had spent 12 years not in defeat, but in preparation. Now, they were ready to show the galaxy what they had built in the shadows. The awakening storm. Deep within the hull of the human dreadnought Endurance, Captain Elena Vasquez opened her eyes for the first time in 3 years. The cryogenic sleep chamber hissed as it released its seal, and she drew her first conscious breath in what felt like a lifetime. Around her, hundreds of similar chambers were opening simultaneously, releasing the crew that had volunteered to sleep through humanity's darkest hour. Elena sat up slowly, her body adjusting to consciousness as the chamber's medical systems completed their revival sequence. She was a tall woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many battles, but her mind was sharp and focused. She had been chosen to command the Silent Fleet not for her aggression, but for her patience and strategic thinking. "Status report," she said, her voice still rough from the long sleep. "All systems operational, Captain," came the reply from the ship's artificial intelligence. "The fleet is fully deployed. 3,742 vessels are now active and in position throughout Corvini space. The Revelation Protocol has been completed successfully." Elena stood and walked to the main viewport. Outside, the stars looked the same as they had 3 years ago, but she knew everything had changed. The Corvini Empire had celebrated their victory over humanity, never suspecting that defeat had been part of a much larger plan. "Dr. Chen to the bridge, please," she announced over the ship's communication system. Within minutes, Dr. Marcus Chen arrived, looking as alert as if he had never slept at all. Chen was humanity's greatest scientific mind, the architect of the technology that had made the Silent Fleet possible. "Elena," he said, using her first name in the way of old friends who had shared impossible dreams. "It worked exactly as we calculated. The Corvini spent 12 years fighting our decoy fleets while we built the real one. They think in terms of conquest and domination, so they never considered that a species might use surrender as a strategic tool." Elena nodded. "Show me what we're facing now." The bridge's main display activated, showing a real-time view of Corvini space. Their empire was vast, spanning hundreds of systems, but now every major installation was within range of human vessels. The Silent Fleet had emerged from hidden construction sites, scattered throughout the galaxy's empty regions, places where no one thought to look because they seemed too remote and resource-poor to be useful. "The Corvini fleet is attempting to organize a response," Chen reported, "but they're confused and scattered. They built their strategy around the assumption that they had eliminated our military capability. Now they're discovering that everything they thought they knew about human strength was carefully crafted deception." Elena studied the tactical information flowing across her screens. Admiral Zeth Korvax's flagship was surrounded by human vessels, but no shots had been fired. This was exactly according to plan. Humanity's goal was not revenge, but respect. "Open a communication channel to the Corvini flagship," she ordered. Moments later, Admiral Zeth's image appeared on the screen. His scaled features showed a mixture of anger, confusion, and grudging respect. Behind him, Elena could see the frantic activity of a command crew trying to understand an impossible situation. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Fleet," she began, her voice calm and professional. "I believe you have some questions." Zeth's 4 arms were rigid with tension. "Your people surrendered. Your worlds went dark. Your fleets were destroyed. How do you have ships that our sensors never detected?" Helena smiled slightly. "Admiral, your people are excellent warriors, but you think like conquerors. You assume that what you can see is all that exists. For 12 years, while you fought our public military, we built our real one in places you never thought to look. We used your victory against our visible forces to hide the construction of something far more substantial." "Impossible," Zeth replied. "The resources required for such a fleet would be enormous. We monitored your industrial capacity. We tracked your raw material shipments. We accounted for every major construction facility." Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Admiral, you monitored the industrial capacity we wanted you to see. You tracked the shipments we allowed you to find. You accounted for the facilities we made visible." He gestured to the display showing the Silent Fleet. "But humanity has always excelled at thinking in 3 dimensions. While you watched our planets, we built in the void. While you counted our factories, we created new ones in asteroid fields and deep space. While you calculated our resources, we developed new technologies that made impossible things possible." Elena could see the moment when true understanding dawned in the Corvini Admiral's eyes. "The surrender," he said slowly, "it was all planned." "From the beginning," Elena confirmed. "We knew we couldn't match your empire in a direct military confrontation. You have more worlds, more resources, more established infrastructure. But we had something you didn't consider. We had time, and we had the ability to think beyond conventional strategy. The communication was interrupted by alerts from both fleets. Corvini reinforcements were arriving in multiple systems, but they found themselves outnumbered and outgunned by human vessels that seemed to appear from nowhere. Yet no weapons were being fired. The silent fleet maintained defensive positions, clearly powerful but not aggressive. "What do you want?" Zeth asked finally. Alina's expression became serious. "What we've always wanted, Admiral. The right to exist without conquest. The right to develop our civilization without interference. The right to be left alone." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Your empire has spent centuries expanding by force. You've conquered hundreds of species because you believed might made right. But now you're facing a species that prepared for your attack by thinking differently than you expected." Dr. Chen activated a new display showing the technological capabilities of the silent fleet. "Our ships use quantum stealth technology that makes them invisible to conventional sensors until we choose to be seen. Our power systems are based on principles your scientists haven't discovered yet. Our defensive capabilities can protect us from any weapon in your arsenal. And our construction methods allow us to build new vessels faster than you can destroy them." Zeth studied the information, his military mind grasping the implications. "You could destroy our entire fleet." "Yes," Alina said simply, "but that's not why we're here. We built this fleet to ensure our survival, not to become conquerors ourselves. We're offering you something your empire has never experienced before, a negotiated peace between equals." The Corvani admiral was silent for a long moment. His entire worldview was being challenged by the existence of the silent fleet. His empire had built its power on the assumption that superior technology and military strength automatically led to victory. But humanity had just demonstrated that intelligence, patience, and strategic thinking could overcome raw power. "The Emperor will never accept this," he said finally. Alina nodded. "Then the Emperor will learn what every previous generation of would-be galactic conquerors has learned. There's always someone stronger, someone smarter, someone more prepared. The difference is that we're offering him the chance to learn that lesson without his empire being destroyed in the process." Throughout Corvini space, the same conversation was happening on hundreds of communication channels. Human captains were speaking with Corvani commanders, explaining that the war was not continuing, but transforming. Humanity was not seeking revenge for 12 years of invasion and destruction. Instead, they were offering something unprecedented in galactic history, a peace treaty between equals. Emperor Vorthak himself eventually joined the communication, his ancient features showing the weight of absolute power suddenly challenged by an impossible reality. "You hid in the darkness while we conquered the light," he said to Alina. "You built in secret while we celebrated in public. You planned for decades while we thought in terms of immediate victory." "Your Majesty," Alina replied respectfully, "we learned from every species you conquered before us. We studied their mistakes and developed solutions to the problems that led to their defeat. The result is not your empire's destruction, but an opportunity for both our civilizations to coexist without constant warfare." The Emperor considered this. Around him, his military advisors were calculating the impossible odds they now faced. The silent fleet was not just militarily superior. It represented a completely different approach to interstellar conflict. "What are your terms?" he asked. Alina smiled. "Recognition of human sovereignty over our chosen territories, non-interference in our internal affairs, and establishment of trade and diplomatic relations based on mutual respect rather than conquest." She paused, then added, "In return, we offer the same to your empire, plus sharing of certain technologies that could benefit both our civilizations." The negotiations that followed would reshape the galaxy. For the first time in Corvani history, their empire would sign a treaty with an equal partner rather than dictating terms to a conquered enemy. The silent fleet had accomplished what no military force had ever achieved. It had won a war without fighting a battle, by being so prepared and so powerful that fighting became unnecessary. As the human ships gradually withdrew to their new territorial boundaries, both species began to understand that they had witnessed something unique. War had been replaced by diplomacy, conquest by cooperation, and fear by respect. The Silent Fleet had returned not as conquerors, but as teachers, showing the galaxy that there were alternatives to endless conflict. In the years that followed, the story of humanity's hidden fleet would become legend throughout known space. But for Elena Vasquez and her crew, it was simply the successful completion of the most ambitious strategic deception in galactic history. They had turned apparent defeat into ultimate victory, not through superior firepower, but through superior thinking. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.